Haven't even had 10 minutes to absorb these. Well, hello. Welcome to Virtual Studio Party. The one that I failed to market or promote or advertise or whatever in any way, to publicize. That's the word I'm looking for. So we'll just have to hope a few people show up. By the way, on my website, which Cal, my indomitable and handsome assistant.
Well, not so handsome. That's why I'm off camera.
Say hello, Cal.
Hello, Cal. Hello, Kim.
He will put in the chat my website address, but also after this has gone off the air, I will put it in the description below as well. And the reason I'm mentioning my website is because, of course, you can find the dates for upcoming virtual studio parties there. There will be one more after this. We'll be skipping Easter Monday. So I think April 25th is the next one after this. So anyway, Virtual Studio Party is the studio party that comes to you via high-speed internet. And I work on different things all the time. Sometimes there are repeats of media depending on what's going on. Like I have some episodes, excuse me, sequential episodes that were artist books or excuse me, or gel plate printing. I think I'll have a little drink. This is where the tea with lemon comes in handy.
Once you've refreshed yourself, you might, and finished your intro, you might want to tell people before you switch to the overhead camera what they're seeing behind you.
Yes. So before I talk about what I'm going to do today, even though I'm talking about the media.
No.
So today I will talk about what's behind my head, but I was on a particular line of thought.
Apologize.
Today I am going to be drawing as a way to develop a design around a unique mythical creature that I'm going to execute ultimately in wood burning or pyrography. But you won't see any of that wood burning today. In fact, if you see a finished drawing today, that would be pretty much a miracle. But I don't know. I thought it might be interesting to have that kind of process here because it's so important to developing work.
Just on that topic, a lot of whatever media about artists, but about so many processes, there's all kinds of work that happens before you see the sort of glory stuff.
Absolutely.
And for an artist, that's often like weeks or months of stuff.
Or minutes.
Yeah.
It just depends. I mean, ideally, we'd have a lot more time. Or I would have a lot more time to develop this. But I'm pretty much working day and night on my 2 upcoming exhibitions. Which brings me to what's behind me here on our mantle. This is our fireplace mantle behind me, and it's where we've always, since we've moved here, put our works in progress, new work, things we're puzzling over. So up here you see smaller prints. They're 13 by 19 inch prints of photography because I'm part of 2 exhibitions related to the Contact Festival of Photography in Toronto, which happens every May. And obviously COVID has done a lot to limit it or cancel it in the past couple of years, but it's on this year, and there's an online catalog. And I have 2 shows that are in that online catalog. So the first one opens April 26th, and it's called Viewfind Her, a play on the viewfinder of a camera. And it's a group show of women photographers, and I'm launching a new series there. I'm not normally a straight photographer. Normally I work digitally and with mixed media and digital mixed media and layer with photography, sometimes only a little, sometimes a lot. But in this case, I'm doing really straight, rigorous tabletop photography for this series called My Father's Things. And so the shirts you see behind my head and the pile of folded shirts is actually from my collection of my father's shirts. My father passed away last year, and so this is one way for me to remember him and commemorate him and honor him and process. Process is a complicated word, but it's not that I will ever stop missing my father. Understand that. So there's no end to the process, but I do need to process the reality of our life together and now my life post him. The other show I'm working on is a solo show, and it is the one that I am trying not to panic about, and that's what today's drawing is going to be for. Um, I'm doing some wood burning drawings that are going to appear in a big grid along with photo digital mixed media and image transfers and photos printed on aluminum and other things printed on aluminum and some with silvery metal showing. Anyway, it's going to be, and I've already had some things printed on silk for it. So there's all kinds of exciting things coming. I just have to get the work finished and survive the process long enough to install the show and then to introduce people to the show. So you can look forward to some online stuff connected with the show, which is to say I'm actually having a one of the reasons for those of you who are watching this who are on my mailing list, you know that I've launched a sponsorship program. And one of the reasons I have is because I'm hiring someone to film the show to create a virtual 3D tour online so that anyone anywhere in the world can visit it. And it's not the same as being in person, but it's better than just flat photographs. It's a great supplement to flat photographs, and it's very high resolution. Because you'll be able to move through the exhibition, which I think is, and go close and also see views. So I'm very excited about that because it's the first time I'm doing that. And it will stay online for years to come. And so anyway, something to look forward to. So Cal, I should ask you who has said hello, because I see there are a few names.
You do indeed. Ricky, welcome aboard,
Ricky. I'm glad you made it.
She says to you, congratulations on your new exhibits.
Thank you.
She says, I don't usually sit in on your virtual party, but I've missed you all and wanted to see and hear you. And so we're so glad to have you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming. You're always welcome, Ricky.
Yeah.
Your schedule may not permit you to come every week when Cal and I are alternating our virtual collage jam with this event. But yeah, you're always welcome. It's nice to see you here.
And Lori Graham says, hooray, Kim Lee, for for all your shows you've been talking about.
Thank you.
And she, just to the things you were saying at the end about the digital stuff, she says, accessible adaptations.
Exactly, right? Because in addition to the people who live too far away to come and visit the show, and people who just can't make it because it's only on for 3 weeks. Normally it'd be on for 4 weeks, but COVID has changed a lot of things. I'll just leave it at that. There are also, I know lots of people who are immune compromised and cannot risk going to public places where people maybe I am going to require people to be masked when they come to the show because I want it to be as safe as possible for everyone. And we, Cal and I, are responsible for some elders, one of whom's in long-term care, and we can't risk spreading anything to anyone. So
Yeah.
so there is HEPA filtration in the gallery as well, which was something that happened as a result. For my solo show at Redhead Gallery, the gallery got a grant to do things like invest in that, which is very helpful.
I was at the grocery store a few days ago, and I sort of noted a couple talking back and forth, and I thought, why are they so notable? And I thought, oh, it's because they're speaking in Spanish, and I don't normally hear that. And they were talking about like what they were buying and so on. And then it was only later that I realized
they weren't wearing masks.
It's because they weren't wearing a mask that they stood out to me. And it clicked later, and I thought, oh, you mean you can come into a grocery store without your mask now? And I checked on the door, and there's no thing about having a mask upon entry. So too early for me, but
because the numbers where we are in Ontario, the numbers are going up again because the mask, so many things got regulations got put aside.
And just before you continue, I just want to say that Val has also joined us.
Hi, Val.
So, hi, Val.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
She said hi earlier, but I just had to get through. So welcome aboard, everybody.
Cal, maybe you could look up the Contact Festival Toronto link and put it in its
I will.
YouTube compatible form,
of course,
which is to say not
fully
with dot written out.
And Val says she finds most people are wearing masks still, and I find the same thing. But I definitely have been in stores with people without masks, and it's like, I can't wait till I can do that, but I don't feel comfortable doing it yet. So
we know a couple of people who wear N95 masks, so the much better quality masks, but they were at an event where lots of people were not wearing masks, and they both got COVID. So that made life very difficult for the family of 4 living in a condominium, trying to isolate the 2 who were sick and keep the 2 who weren't sick from getting sick.
Yeah, and another person who's extremely healthy, and she still had to
she said it was like the worst pneumonia she'd ever had, and she was super fit, super healthy, triple vaccinated. So
really
you just don't know
herself. So
But anyway, we won't belabor this because this is supposed to be a respite.
Exactly.
So I apologize, everyone, for getting onto COVID too long.
It sneaks out sometimes because you start thinking about it, but that's what we're here to not think about, right? So
we can all use a break from all the things. Am I right?
Yeah. And so, would you like me to switch you to the overhead camera so that you can talk a little bit about what you're...
First, I'll just... I will ask you to
Okay, sure. Yeah.
I just wanted to hold up some references I have collected on a mythical creature called a Garuda Bird. And I think one virtual studio party quite some time ago, I was working on a Garuda Bird, which didn't get very developed, or not as far as I wanted to. So I've just collected a really wide variety of sources, and I'm going to talk to you what a Garuda Bird is before I get into the drawing, because it's very interesting, and it's part of what I love about being an artist is the research I do and the expansion of my knowledge and understanding of the world, even though obviously I'm not an academic studying the origins and role of the Garuda Bird. But so I'm not going super in depth, but I find it fascinating learning something. I knew something about it. So the Garuda Bird is a mythical, religious figure. It's a god in the Hindu pantheon, also in the Buddhist and Jain religions, a figure in those. In the Hindu pantheon, it's... well, in all of them, it's a bird, a kind of a hybrid bird-man figure that is the mount of the god Vishnu, who is one of the 3 primary deities in Hinduism, along with Brahma and Shiva. And it spread from India throughout Southeast Asia. So you'll find Garuda birds in Thailand, where it is an emblem of the country, and also in Indonesia, where it is also an emblem of the country, but with different histories. So my father was from Indonesia. He was a double diaspora guy, if to use that term, because ethnically from China, a few generations earlier, moved to Indonesia, and then my father and subsequently his brothers moved to Canada. So yeah. So the Garuda bird for me has become kind of signifies my father and his journey to the other side of the planet at a time when flight wasn't an everyday thing. He came here in the 50s, the 1950s, and that was a big deal. And he never went home again. So big deal. The Garuda bird, if you're familiar with the Indonesian national airline, it's called Garuda Airlines. And in Indonesia, there's a special reason for, there may be many, many reasons, but one special reason for its significance to Indonesia culturally is it represents something to Indonesians, which is Garuda was willing to sacrifice himself to rescue his mother. And Indonesia fought for independence from the Dutch colonialism after the Second World War. And so the mother representing their land and their culture, and Garuda representing their fight to self-determination. So yeah, and I've grown up being familiar with the form of the Garuda. Like if you look at this, you can see the beak, and yet there's a very muscular human figure, but the feet are not human feet.
Right, human down to the ankles, and then into sort of human-esque talons.
Yes. And the wings are always glorious. And this one's a sculpture. Might be a stone sculpture. I'm not positive. Some of them are stone sculptures.
That's a great reference to that image.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous one, because one of the things is there's a real love of ornament and design in Southeast Asia. And so you get a lot of very symmetrical designs, which are beautiful and formal, but are not what I'm looking for, because what I'm making is not going to be self-contained. And this, it's going to be intermixed with other visuals, and this doesn't lend itself to that in the same way, unless I were, well, let me explain better. If I were just confining it to one panel, then it could be self-contained like that. But my idea is that it should be at least 2 panels worth. Now, that's my starting idea. Starting ideas are just that. They get you going, and then you work on it and see what it becomes, right? Yeah, so I converted, the other thing I did is I converted all the color photographs to black and white, because it's also traditional in these cultures, bearing in mind this partially, my father is a hybrid Chinese Indonesian, so Indonesian is blended with Chinese, but they're, both Chinese and Indonesian culture, there's a lot of color. And if I work from color references, I'm going to be, the color is going to dominate so much, it's going to be very hard for me to find the lines and the shapes. So yeah, so
Lori, just a little aside,
Yeah.
Lori also noted snakes and scales too on the bird, on the Garuda.
Yes, and actually there's something there's some myth. I don't know what it is. And I have an example of it here. Like this one, for example, the Garuda is on top of some other bird-like creature that seems to have scales. Let's see if I can. There. Yeah, actually, that focused nicely. And that isn't that amazing? And I do not know the background on that at all, unfortunately. But the serpent, there is some story where the Garuda fights and overcomes serpents. Here we are. This reference shows them. So there's the incredible Garuda, and down there are the serpents. Quite glorious, aren't they? Look at the way the scales shift as on that tight curve. Really nicely done. Yes. So often you will see, because the feathers change size as they move along, you'll see feathers that maybe look a bit like scales, but it's possible maybe that you see scales somewhere else. Yes, on this one. This is the one that has the scales, right? So you can see serpents here. So somehow the scales on the legs of this Garuda, this is a Thai Garuda, by the way, which I can tell because of the pointy headdress and the little points here. It's Thai ornament for headdresses and for the tops of temples is very specific.
Little recurring small.
Actually, Burmese is a bit related to that too.
Right. Yeah, I think I've seen that. That sort of it like goes along and then kicks out, goes along, kicks out.
Yeah, just like goes up to a pointy thing at the top. So anyway, it's a really interesting and valuable thing to study other cultures' visual languages. Here we get a lot of education in Western artistic traditions because we're part of the West, but we're also very diverse. North America is full of people from all over the world. And so one of the things we can benefit from is that diversity. So if you could switch to the overhead camera.
I remember you were working on a piece several years ago where you were using a repeating motif of a Chinese cloud.
Yes.
And I said, what is that? And you said, it's a cloud. It's and I said, it doesn't look like a cloud. And you said, that's because you're not Chinese. And it occurs to me that, we have our sort of visual shorthands for certain things that,
we recognize
that are
certain
highly
things.
Stylized, right?
Yep.
Sorry, guys, I forgot to...
And it's upside down now. Okay, yeah. Works once it's on the table. There we go. And I'll move my laptop back so you don't have to stare at my name there.
And just so everyone knows, I've put the Scotiabank contact photo website in the chat, as well as the names of Kim's 2 shows, Burnt Offerings, her solo show, and Viewfind Her, so that you can look for them on the contact website. And
both of them
details.
Feature images by me. So the group show just has one image by me, whereas the other one has a triptych.
Awesome. So you were chosen to have the...
out of 7 artists, there are 3 images, I think, from the group show that are representing our show. And and in fact, it's a batik shirt. So it's from Malaysia, but Malaysian and Indonesian culture are very, very close. Yeah. So this, by the way, is my favorite mixed media pad or line of pads. I think you can also buy sheets of the paper. It's Strathmore Vision, and I like it because it has a great weight, and it's mixed media because it will accept ink and washes, not super wet stuff. It'll buckle, but it will take some wetness, but it's nice and smooth. So I also use it for gel plate printing. It's great for that. It would be good for lots of media. Hence, mixed media. I'm practically a genius, guys.
Watch out, world.
Ooh, I have some other interesting paper here today, which I'll share with you. Got this at the Sunhua bookstore in downtown Toronto in the Chinatown. Sunhua bookstore has been around forever. I remember going to it when I might have been a teenager. Anyway, I'm going to try inkjet printing directly onto this paper and see what happens. And again, that's of course because of my show coming up. So we'll see.
Research.
Yeah. Printing to make burnt offerings, in fact, which is the name of the show. Doesn't that just tie together like so well?
It's like you've thought this through.
It's almost as if, right? So, we're used to thinking of drawing as a way of depicting or representing something. And of course, it can be that. But it's also crucially a method of thinking. Our thinking brains are actually closely tied into our hands and our use of tools. I believe our brain development is credited with that. And drawing is not only the use of tools, but it's also the intentional, mindful observation of things. If you're representing, on the other hand, it's also trying to get out in the world something that's in your head. So whether that's, a feeling or a structure or relationships, mind mapping, people who mind map, that's a form of drawing. Words and drawing, not actual pictures, but creating networks and relationships. It's undervalued.
I think so. People sort of think they have to have the vision and then they start.
Yeah.
Whereas it's the opposite. You have to start to get the vision.
Yeah. Because you're actually recruiting more of your brain once you start doing that.
I forget who it's attributed to, but that writing adage that how do I know what I think until I see what I write?
Yeah, exactly.
And
I'm sort of that way about speaking, actually.
And yeah, well, there's so many things that I think, we say something and then we hear it, right? And so then we think, oh, that doesn't sound right. I need to put it more like this. We write something and we see it written and we think, no, not like that, something more like this. And the same thing for drawing or any visual art, really. You could do it with painting, but drawing is the simplest, most direct form of, I think, of visual art. And I think it's kind of this interesting way of having a conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
Some people talk with themselves, right? And some people deride that. But in fact, it's because we get to hear it.
Yeah.
And then it gives us this, it's like we're having a conversation with ourselves. And I think drawing is the same thing, and writing, and you put it on a surface and then you see it and you've got this sort of like closed loop. It's all you, but it's different parts of you.
And all artists, and I mean of every kind, musicians, writers, whoever, understand, once they're experienced at least, that thoughts floating in your head are of no use to you, and they'll disappear ultimately, and they'll crowd your head. Thoughts that are captured in some way, however roughly, are the ones that are actually valuable because you've captured them. They will help you build something. So this obviously is not a Garuda bird. I'm just going to point out I'm warming up because I haven't been drawing, and even if I had been drawing, it would be valuable to just warm up a little bit, which is to get not only the muscles warmed up, but the connection between the brain and the hand warmed up. And the tactile, the part of it is that tactile. I'm changing pressure as I go, and that sends different nerve signals to my brain, different feedback to my brain. So it's waking up the channels, right?
So Ricky has a question, and I'm not quite sure what you mean, Ricky. She says there are no values in drawing, question mark. So I think she's referring to lights and darks.
Oh, of course there are values in drawing. Line drawing is just line, but most drawing has some tone in it as well.
But even line drawings can have variations in value, right?
Look at
because
that.
some of those are darker than others.
When I said I varied the pressure, you see lighter parts of the line and darker parts of the line? That's a change in values.
Yeah.
Right?
So
this is darker than this. So there's, if you look at this, your eye will go to certain places. And part of the reason for that, a huge part of the reason for that is
stronger value contrast.
Greater value contrast.
Yeah.
Right?
But drawing doesn't necessarily, you can have a line drawing,
you can
and
have
you can
a
also
pure
have
line
tone
drawing.
And you can have pure tone drawings.
But even a pure line drawing, you've made a decision, right? Like if I use a black pen on white paper, I've made a decision that it's going to be a very simple, high contrast value system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always a system, right? People can paint black and white paintings. They've still decided on a system, even though they're not painting in color, right?
Now I know
it's called an achromatic system.
Yeah, exactly. A system without color.
Yes.
Just like atheist is without theism.
without the thee.
Yeah, exactly. So Ricky, I know that you were working towards, I don't know whether you're still working towards it or done, some value collages for a cafe show. How's that
cool.
going? Values are top of mind for Ricky.
That's why. That definitely explains it. I quite understand. Yeah, please share that. So I'm just going to start browsing, spending a little bit of time with each of these photographs and just playing with, by drawing, with different forms I notice. I'm not trying to draw the whole thing. I'm not trying to do anything. It's a way of experiencing what I'm seeing and noticing.
So what you're trying to do is open up and not be judgmental and not and just feel your way.
Yeah.
Be more intuitive.
There's so much about this that is not what I'm used to doing. I'm used to figure and portrait drawing and occasionally some, objects or scenes or still life or something, and even just a touch of nature too. But I am not used to feathers. And I am also not used to trying to speak, as it were, the visual language of Indonesia or Southeast Asia, the varied ones in Southeast Asia. I'm used to looking at them because I grew up around them, and
so they're not completely foreign, but they're not part of your practice.
Yeah,
as
my
much.
hand isn't used to doing it. My
Your
brain
eyes,
isn't
brain
used
and
to
eyes.
trying to create it, you know?
Right.
And so that is a different thing. And it's a good workout. And I'm not an ethnologist or something. I'm not trying to recreate precisely how it's done in its native territory, but I definitely want the cultural relationship very clear.
Right.
So I'm drawing the way I draw.
It
as
has
I
an
work my way
interpretive
through
element, but
this.
it
Absolutely.
is also important to be faithful enough to the references that the references are
Exactly.
that they connect. Yeah. Ricky says she's been working on portraits from my class.
Right.
I've started one and will post them when I'm done, but definitely struggling. Oh dear.
Oh
Yes,
dear.
I am part of a show in a small coffee shop, not juried, peer reviewed. No,
That's all right.
Yeah.
You're allowed. You're
Yeah.
totally allowed to. My solo show is self-curated, and I'm pleased that it is, because no one's going to mess with it then.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a very experienced artist and designer, so I do have that behind me. But all that to say, self-mounted is a great thing. You will have to do the thinking about where does each piece go and which pieces get in and all of that. And that's really valuable stuff. So
sort of
good for you.
Learning to have the faith in yourself and have some autonomy is actually really beneficial when you're used to working in more codified.
Yeah, I agree. I think also it will help you appreciate the difficulties that some of the difficulties that jurors and curators face when they're doing their work. I do love that strong knee and leg and thigh, and it's pointing out to me how much I miss life drawing. It's been so long since I did any. It's good feeling the shapes and the relationships of the things. I mean, those are two of the things that are different about this, working on this kind of imagery that I'm not accustomed to. It's interesting that the legs are so powerful. The arms are more slender in this one. And his taloned hands are holding Vishnu's feet. So that's how Vishnu stays secure, even though he's in a prayer position. So interesting. There's Vishnu's big toe.
When you get a moment, guys, let us know what you're working on or playing with today.
Yeah, did you bring collage work? I presume Val would.
I imagine Val is going to be collaging, but you never know.
Unless she's just kicking back.
Yeah. And Lori, are you playing along, or are you just chilling, or?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what you were doing. Were you? I feel like it was needlework you were doing the last time we had one of these. Oh, Vishnu has some short trousers on.
Well, it is the tropics.
Yeah, well, there's a traditional Indian trouser that comes below the knees and is very baggy around the pelvic area. Which is very suitable for the tropics or hot country, even if it's not tropics.
Well, and if the sun is hot, you need protection from the sun, but you certainly don't want.
You need air movement.
Yeah, you don't want
nothing
warm
clingy.
clothing. Yeah.
So I don't have this head positioned just right. I'm just wandering around, and things will end up sometimes in the quote unquote right place and sometimes not. It's more about the wandering.
So Val says, and I love this, she's working on Post-it collages for a World Collage Day call for a group in Belgium. I love that.
Post-it collages.
I love the idea of like doing a collage. I presume Post-it notes, right? And that's awesome. And it's such a specific, crazy thing, but they're universally recognized.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love now that we have this, thanks to the internet, and I think also thanks to COVID, that's been a silver lining, that there's so much more online options for calls and connection across around the globe.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love it.
It existed and it was happening before COVID, but I think it really
I think that the problem is enough people resisted it that it didn't take off to the same extent as the need for it created a much bigger audience and participation rate.
And I think, our lives slowed down sufficiently that at least somewhat, not for everyone, but for a lot of people, such.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for that life slowdown. Didn't happen here.
but you know what I mean, like.
Yeah. No, I mean a lot of the Redhead Gallery, where I'm having my solo show, which is an artist collective gallery, we were closed for months and months. There were no shows.
Lori says, same as doctor's appointments. Used to be impossible to get virtual.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true. No one wanted virtual or on the phone, right? No, you got to come in and like.
Yeah, and now all I've done is phone appointments. I'm going to do some tests that have to be in person, but other than that, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, for sad reasons, because honestly, I don't want to go into the doctor's office and get COVID. I had a really touching phone call with my doctor. Actually, we're very friendly with her, and yeah, her experience is explaining to people that, going to work knowing you have COVID is not a good thing. Like all the people that puts at risk, it's unfathomable, really, how many people it puts at risk. Anyway, I'm on COVID again, so I'm getting off of it because that's not why we're here. But yeah. I know, for example, there were a lot of people who resisted the idea of taking online courses, certainly in our community, before COVID happened. And a number of them, it was just, it was unfamiliarity as well, and a fear of technology, and the necessity of, figuring out how to attend one of these, or figuring out how to do Zoom so you can have some social time and have a class and learn something. That has been a silver lining in an otherwise difficult time. So
yeah, well, when it first happened, I remembered thinking, wait, what? How can I even teach online? And then that very quickly turned into, okay, it's different, but this can work, and it was really.
We actually enjoy teaching online.
I do now. Like, it didn't take me long to be like, oh, this has significant upsides.
Yeah.
As well
it does.
As, but at first it was like, how do I know how I do it in person, but how do I do it this way?
I want to go where this sculpture is. Can you see through the window? There are a whole bunch of sculptures outdoors.
Wow, yeah.
And these beautiful forested areas or something. Yeah, I want to go there. Look at those marble floors. My dad talked about how when he was growing up, the the homes, so extended family kind of, he moved freely between homes, and it could be hard to find him because he'd sleep over at this cousin's place, or he'd be at his grandmother's place or whatever. It's kind of wild to think of now with um helicopter parenting, they call it, right? But he talked about how marble floors were the thing, and they were middle class, so that's why they had marble. And I just think how deliciously cool marble floors are when you're barefoot. If and you're in a hot country like that, what a relief that would be. So very smart. My dad always hated the heat, and which is unfortunate when you are born in a country that's on the equator. So he remembered taking 2 to 3 showers a day just to get the sweat off and cope.
Ricky asks, is Canada pushing a second booster? And I haven't heard anything about that. Have you, Kim?
No.
So is that something?
So it's a even if the federal government tries to promote the idea, healthcare is in the hands of the provinces, and that complicates things. It has made, because of the character of certain of our provincial governments, it has meant there have been not as many best practices as one would hope for, science-based practices. I hope that we will get another booster as part of our public health care, but we don't know yet. It's a good question, though, Ricky.
Mm-hmm. I had heard some mention of it being something that is probably going to happen, but I haven't heard any of it in terms of actually happening.
Well, we also have a provincial election coming up. Right. So, he'll probably roll it out. Look, you can get free boosters now the day before the election. Aren't I great? We just got our bribery checks in the mail. There's just no end to it. So I don't want to spend so much time on that. These wings, I've drawn the head too high up, so I'm gonna do the wings separately. These wings are glorious. You gotta.
Lori says some folks in long-term care, staff and residents, already have had the second booster.
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you, Lori. Because I did hear, I think that my godmother had.
We just needed our outsourced brain, aka Lori, to remind us.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Lori. My brain right now is so
preoccupied.
So fried. I'm
fried and preoccupied.
Sleeping and working at such weird hours. I really have a very poor sense of time actually now, because I honestly, if things or people didn't tell me what time it was, I wouldn't know. It's sort of like, oh, is there daylight or is there not daylight? That's about the extent of my.
To what extent would you say that is your normal or your preferred? Let's put it that way.
I don't know. Like, I was thinking about this. I know there are lots of successful musicians, for example, who keep strange hours, or successful visual artists, because they don't have the constraints. Obviously, everyone has things
Some,
they have to do, and that require keeping hours that relate to the rest of the world. But if their work doesn't, or in fact their work demands, musicians often have to become night owls because
yes,
they perform at night.
yeah,
Um,
that's true.
and like, I remember when I used to live downtown in Toronto, there were places in Yorkville that musicians and comedians used to go to at night after their last gig. So, it was really important that there were things that were open late at night. Fran's restaurant actually was one of the classic places, a real old school diner in Toronto. A lot of history. Wow, that's a lot of feathers, you really, it's hard to wrap my head around drawing that many feathers. I'm sure I will get used to it, but at this point, I'm glad I'm just scribbling.
Well, it'll be great for the wood burning.
Well, I'll have a
Feather number
proper
372, feather number 373.
It will help to have a proper working drawing design to transfer onto the wood, and then at that point I'm just following along, right? But to even think in terms of this many feathers is kind of crazy at this point. Because now, a bird illustrator or something.
Be like, this is easy.
Yeah.
The old familiar.
Yeah. They just get down to it, and that would be that. Oh, I see. That's the arm. Oh, it's so interesting when you don't realize what you're drawing and then you figure it out. Look at the feet on this one. Oh, sorry. There's the feet on this one. Those are the little feet of the critter it's on, but those great big talon feet. So very, someone referred to it as the Indonesian eagle or something, or the Southeast Asian eagle. Mythical eagle.
Lori says, in productive flourishing, there is an energy heat mapping tool to see the best times of day for various kinds of work. Yes.
Yeah.
Depending on
it's highly variable for me. I noticed, though, depending on what I've been doing. What were you?
I was just going to say something like that, because I think some of us have our usual go-to times when we're strong.
Yeah.
And then I think sometimes circumstances will change those, right?
Yeah.
So,
like, I have done so far preparing for the show, and historically, some of my best work, at 2, 3, and 4 in the morning. Even, I've worked till dawn and all of that. Usually I'm starting to get worn out towards the end of my shift, but some nights I can't hack it at all because I've overdone it the previous.
And sometimes overdoing, I think, is necessary, right? Because you get on a roll and you think, I'm going to pay for this later, but it's worth it for what I
actually
need
right the intensity in order to get to where I need to go creatively, or even technically. Sometimes it's weird, but
make little deals with
the truth. Like these shirts that are behind my head, they were really super finicky to shoot. I had to be very rigorous and technical about how I shot it. And of course, because I'm not a tabletop photographer, I will, I had to invent for myself how this was going to look. Fortunately, my eye is good. It's just my experience at that specific approach is not high. But But then when I'm in Photoshop doing, because good photographs are made, not taken, as Ansel Adams used to say. He'd spend days in the dark room adjusting different areas of each of his beautiful scenes of Yosemite, for example. And I had to do the same, my equivalent with the photographs of the shirts. Not days, thank God, or I'd still be working on them, on each one, but yeah.
But definitely many hours afterwards
Many
on each
hours
one,
for
right?
each one,
Because,
yeah.
oh, this part's overexposed, this part's
Yeah.
underexposed, this part has a reflection that I didn't want, so I have to fix that. But everything else is good around it. But then there's that thing, and yeah.
Weird artifacts show up because of optical things that happen that it's hard to explain, but if you're it's a bit of a shock when at 3:30 in the morning you discover that there's this unwanted color aberration and pattern appearing in a perfectly plain beige Oxford cloth shirt.
Lori says back to productive flourishing.
Which is how Lori and I know each other, by the way, everybody.
Right.
So, which is an awesome community.
They've been talking lately about a weekly heat mapping, like always better on a Monday, or seasonal maps.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Yeah. Yeah, because honestly, over the course of the week, the change in energy is so different. The level of energy is so different, and what I can tackle is so different. But I'm so far behind preparing for the show. I'm doing my best to catch up, obviously, but because of all the life things that have gone on in the last 15 months, that's why I'm sleeping and resting and working in weird cycles, because I take a break when I need it, whatever time of day or night that is, or a nap even, but a break. And then as soon as I have enough energy to resume working, I start working. And I work for as long as I'm able to, and then I take a break. And it just goes like that. So it has no attachment to time. It just goes with my energy cycles. I don't know. I feel like I need to tackle those feathers again. Just I've never had a very strong relationship with time, to be honest.
I think really you'd be happy with just having being aware of the fact of the time of day it is, and
when sunset is, when sunrise is,
and by how they behave, and then just working and playing and doing what you need to do based on that, right?
Yeah. Sometimes staying up all night, sometimes being up with the birds, just.
But we end up living in this very time structured society.
Yeah.
And so being like that is a challenge.
Well, industrialization, right, brought about bells and whistles and alarm clocks and all of that, as opposed to just kind of more general senses of what part of the day we're in. It's a lot different from an hourglass, for example, for keeping time. But even the way they set up schools was in response to what they needed for factory workers, right?
Yeah.
They needed to train students to respond to bells and to
the factory bells and whistles to signal, and so train them early.
Yeah.
It's really quite appalling when you think about it.
Yeah. Let's just say I'm not a natural. And I don't.
No, you are a natural.
I don't.
You much
fit
prefer
in,
natural.
Yeah. I don't fit well into boxes. So, despite having gone through schools and so on, so that shows you how resistant I am to the training.
You have a long body of work about resisting
boxes and
constraints. Yeah. Because you've done shows called Boxed In about that. You've done work responding to sort of societal pressures of like
subject to limitation is that body of work. It pokes its head up into other bodies of work too. Everybody has their times and places and things that they, I think, feel that the chafing from constraints. Some of us just feel it more than others, like more often, more constantly than others. I think. That's why I'm an artist.
That's right.
One of the reasons.
Outside of the box.
Art is a good
thinking, working, living outside of the box.
It's
with
a good
Kim Coe.
place for someone like me.
Ricky asks, can you talk a bit about how you did the fire on your burnt offerings photos?
Oh, did you go look at the
I think maybe
at the contact image? Yeah. So the fire is
Puckasaw
photography that I shot when we were at Puckasaw National Park, which is a wonderful national park on Lake Superior, the eastern shore of Lake Superior, which is my favorite lake. It's the largest of the Great Lakes, and it's my favorite. It's so rugged, and the lake is famously ocean-like in that there's a lot of wrecked ships. And Gordon Lightfoot, our Canadian
poet laureate and song
folk singer, songwriter, and cultural icon, wrote the song about Edmund Fitzgerald, which was a ship that went down. And it's a wonderful song. Anyway, we were there and we had a fire going, as one does when one is camping. And despite wanting to relax, I couldn't stop taking photographs of the fire. And I had my proper camera and tripod with me, so I was taking the best photographs I could. And, I was doing it, even though I was, after the first 20 minutes, I'm like, okay, I'm either going to stop or I'm going to keep going. And I kept going. I got tired of it. I still kept going. And as a result, because I worked past my
sort of ding, I'm done.
The sort of comfort zone, I ended up with some really special photographs. And I thought I was going to show a lot more of them in this show than I am, but they will appear like in that image that you're seeing. So what you're looking at there is a layered composite photograph. Was it Ricky who asked that?
Yes.
Ricky. And it's done in Photoshop. And for people who aren't familiar with Photoshop, Photoshop is not simply a matter of I press a couple of buttons and this magical layered photograph appears or whatever. Obviously, there are things in it that are simpler to do, but there are also a vast array of things that are literally endless what you could do. and it requires a lot of, building a lot of skills, just like drawing does. It's just a different set of skills. It's something I teach. So it occurred to me that it would be great to combine fire with the self-portrait series, which is called Sackcloth and Ashes, the self-portraits. And so I experimented with different ways of combining it. And in fact, let me show you something else. It's a good time to take a pause and have a drink. You're getting a sneak preview. So there are a lot of reflections on this because it's luster paper. I'll try and angle it so that there are fewer. There. So it's unfortunately distorted, but at least you can see it without so many reflections. So in there is a self-portrait photograph, but it's gone kind of X-ray-like, inverted, and there's flame. And look at how the hair looks. The strands of hair, and there's flame coming through all these parts of me, actually. So that's, same idea, but done differently in Photoshop. Let's see if there's another thing. This one's very different. Same images, but done really differently. You can see the fire where the black and red is coming through, but then there are transformations, including halftone dots, the kind of dots you see in newspapers and full color printing, but exaggerated. And it's a graphic reproduction language that Cal and I are very familiar with as from our long time as graphic designers.
Ricky says, "Oh, wow."
Thank you. That's very nice. You.
In a minute, I'll catch up on Lori. But,
and then one more image I'll share with you. So this is based on, I'll try and tilt it again for the reflections. So I'm sorry, it's just, I'll sort of tilt it so you get an idea of what it looks like throughout, but then I'm going to distort it just so it isn't so glary. This is based on a pen and ink drawing of a heart. Some of you are familiar with my anatomical hearts. Hopefully you can see that there, and you can really feel the inkiness of the shapes, the wetness. But instead of what you expect, there's fire coming through those shapes, and there's smoke emanating from the fiery heart. So one of the things that's cool about this is all three of these are going to be printed on aluminum, brushed silver aluminum. One of them, this one, I've also done as an image transfer onto a wood panel. So wherever there's white, you see, well, any of the lights, you see wood, light colored wood coming through. So, yeah. And there's lots more. Like I have a big grid of images, and I love working with a consistent unit and then creating a wide variety of things that express some aspect of what I'm trying to express. Sometimes in related ways, sometimes I'm expressing it in very different ways. And that makes me very happy and reflects my brain. So that's why it makes me happy.
On a different note, Lori was just telling us what she was up to. She says she's been trying to find a fabric that would create a loop. I've tried 3 fabrics so far today. Now realized I could use an elastic like you would use for an elastic waist, but hemmed to mini size. Absolutely.
So what's the loop for?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
be so interested to know. It just occurred to me some of those broad elastics can be quite interesting. And I just imagined, I might have to try doing this after my shows are over. I just imagined making a bracelet, a cuff-like bracelet out of a wide band of black elastic.
That's awesome.
So,
conforming but comfortable.
Copyright notice.
Called dibs on it.
Yeah. Feel free to make one. But if it's going to go commercial,
she wants her cut.
I want to license it. Yeah. Oh, dear.
Lori says to attach a button, but loosely.
Oh, yeah. 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 Yeah, elastic's actually a great way to go with that. Just drawing the crazy talon feet, but drawing via scribbling, because I'm thinking in terms of the structures underlying it, not the outline. We can get so caught up in outlines and forget about the fact that the outlines only exist because of the underlying structures and relationships between structures. That's something the many times I've taught drawing hands and feet or drawing the face and head, I spend a lot of time on, because it's the most important missing ingredient for people. Get them away from sausage fingers.
Do you think that that drawing hands and feet and portraiture stuff like that is something you could teach online and might in future?
I might, although I'm also imagining, I don't know when yet, but doing an in-person workshop on that.
Yes.
Which might help me figure out how I might do it online, actually. Because one of the things is, since COVID, I haven't taught that subject, although I've taught it for years. And so it kind of makes you feel out of touch with it. And so a workshop of some kind. If it doesn't, if it can't work out in person, then I will just develop one online. But there's a lot of life drawing going on online. But you can miss out on a lot. One of the things I think that can be great is there are actually, there are models who are well set up for modeling online, and that's awesome. So they understand, they've got a decent camera, some lighting, and they understand how to work with them, in which case then it's great. But if it's not well enough understood, then you can actually have a pretty poor experience with it online. But in that case, working from photographs could be better. But working creatively from photographs. So,
Lori asks, have you seen the Best Miniature on CBC?
No.
Best in Miniature, sorry.
No.
There's a contestant that loves to use found objects.
Ooh, that sounds exciting. We'll have to look that up. Thank you for the info.
I can't.
CBC, the Best in Miniature. That's great to know.
There was an artist who had a piece at AGO a while ago who works with sort of...
Kim Adams?
That's it. I knew it was a Kim
Yeah,
Adams.
he works with all kinds of, scale miniatures, and he makes these hugely complex structures. Like, he has a piece that's in the permanent collection of the Art Gallery of Hamilton, and he keeps adding to it. Like, they bought it years ago, and he keeps adding to it. I think he might be a Governor General Award winner. It's brilliant work, though, isn't it?
It is.
Crazed mind.
He uses a bunch of the things that hobbyists use, like from model trains, sets, and so on, especially model trains, and because
Yeah.
but then creates these weird, amazing, dysfunctional, but still fascinating in the same way that's those scale trained
complex worlds.
Yeah.
And crazy stuff going on in them, and it's fantastic.
Lori says doll houses.
Yes, that's another, and that's also scale miniatures like the railroad ones, which is very nice because scale is something when you're working miniature, you want to be intentional about what scale or scales you're including.
She says, like yogurt container into tiny bathtub. It's awesome.
I think miniatures are irresistible.
I think there's a pretty, almost, maybe not universal, but pretty darn universal. Close that we all love. Well,
there's a very strong tradition of miniature painting in South Asia. We know at least one artist who comes from that tradition who's moved to Canada, Sumaira Tazeen, yeah. I think she's university educated in it from Pakistan is, I believe, her home country. But I remember my mother had books of Persian miniatures, and also the illuminations of books, which is to say the ornamental and illustrative aspects of hand-drawn and lettered books.
Yeah, so like the initial caps that have
and ornamental borders, but also the elaborate illustrations, right? That relate to narrative or mythological creatures or whatever. And they're just extraordinary. You can't believe they've painted them that small. Like, you can't even imagine the brushes they're using. And the viscosity of the paint has to be just perfect to be able to flow properly to create good functional lines at that size. Because if you just use some ordinary acrylic paint, man, you're not going to get it. You can alter acrylic paint so that you can do it, but you won't get it out of the box. Now, I have this problem that I notice my Garudas end up looking like cartoons because they do have bulbous eyes, and it's a real language of curves. If you look at this page, and very deliberate curve relationships. So that's something I have to practice.
I'm taking a quick peek on the CBC website at Best in Miniature. It looks like.
Does it look great?
Yeah, it looks awesome.
Looks like we've got a new dinner time.
Yeah, thanks for the tip, Lori. Yeah. That looks like too much fun.
Cal used to build these incredible ships, scale model ships, like the old sailing ships. And
the show is a dollhouse competition. Yeah, it's all 1/12 scale, and they're scaled down particular rooms. I'm seeing glimpses of like one that looks like an architect's studio.
Fabulous.
Figures, and it looks awesome. Sorry, I interrupted you, Kim.
Well, I was just saying how you used to build these elaborate ship models, and I think you used to start with kits, but then you would add more detail and more reality to them.
I was pretty detail OCD when I was younger.
Yeah. You notice he says when he was younger.
When I had the patience for it.
Yeah. Not like now, eh? Now you're so slapdash and.
Yep.
Yeah. That's what we all say about you, Cal.
I know.
Don't believe a word of it, anybody. Whenever you go see a show of Cal's mixed media or or paintings, you've got to look close up as well as from far away, because you never know which pieces might hold some exquisite surprises that you can only see close up. It's part of the fun. I'm just remembering there was a time I was good at these formal curves and so on. When I was young, I used to draw a lot of. I was a big fan of Art Nouveau as a teenager, and I drew stuff that wasn't Art Nouveau but was inspired by the sinuous lines of it.
Sinuous and sensuous. That's Art Nouveau, isn't it?
Well, and sinuous means it's got to have a logic. The curves have to have a logic to them, not they can't be messy curves. They can be complex curves, but they're logical, so they're not messy.
There's kind of like it always has to be flowing.
Yeah.
It can't have any sort of
jarring.
Yeah, exactly. And
there can be tight turns.
So if you're going from a long sweeping turn arc to a sharper arc, that has to happen sinuously rather than abruptly.
Yeah, like that right there is not mechanically perfect, but it is sinuous, and it has a logic to it. I'm not going to do the opposite because I'm trying to train myself to do good ones for for this work. So I don't want to mess myself up. I don't have enough time to overcome how I mess myself up. But that's actually funny. A good way to practice, just getting this, like, look at this. This is beautiful. And then it turns into this. So I'm going to draw it right over top of that. And then this is jarring, but it's because it's an actual change. So it's going from one logical sinuous curve to another logical sinuous curve.
Cherie Ricola says, hey guys, got here in time to say goodbye. Had a medical today, long delayed annual.
Oh good dear,
right. Carol is online as well. I'll have to
catch the Carol.
Stream after the fact. But yeah, we're still here for at least 6 more minutes, Kim.
At least 6 more minutes. That's right.
I was sure that there was still half an hour, so I was thinking, well, not for goodbye exactly.
Yeah, because we never realize what time it is.
It's more often that you lose track of it than I do, and I just did. The last time I looked, it was 3:00, and it feels like 5 minutes ago.
That's pretty funny. I wonder why.
It must be that time's fun when you're having flies. Oh wait, time. The other one.
The other one, right? Yeah. Just picking different details up to follow along the curves and feel them. That's the important part. You have to really feel them, otherwise you can't get them. It's not enough to see them. You have to go deeper than surface seeing. Actually, one of the things that surprised me when I finished drawing this shape, I'll share with you something that came as a very interesting surprise. See, that's a good shape to know for making a formalized fire pattern. Right there, that. So, note to self, right? Where's the one I'm looking for?
It's funny to formalize things like fire and clouds because they're sort of inherently...
And water.
Yeah.
That's another one that gets formalized.
They are often so very not, right?
Yeah, but they have a behavior that you can represent
in
the formalized thing. And And then that formalized version becomes a kind of symbol for the real.
Yeah.
Here it is. So I came across this reference, and I look at all the curves in that, right? But I realized this is Garuda surrounded by flames. And my show Burnt Offerings, you might infer, includes references to flames and fire and smoke, and pick actual images of such. And I thought the Garuda is for that show. And so I'm going to research the connection of Garuda to flames, because
wow, it's like
one of his
perfectly appropriate.
stories may be set in a fiery place, right? And yeah, it would be perfect. Maybe for this drawing, maybe not for this drawing, but actually maybe I'll stay on that one and practice drawing some of these flames. That's quite a muscular Garuda there.
I'll say.
It's like the cover of Men's Health magazine Garuda. Bird Men's Health. I was thinking about your button, Ricky, and I was reminded. Oh, sorry, Lori. Yes, my apologies. One of the ideas I had for this show was going to modify some garments. It's very simple garments I found in order to do a performance. Not super elaborate, not one that took a long time, but a performance related to the burnt offerings and the kind of culturally specific and yet modified, personalized mourning practices. Honoring the ones who've passed. But that is an idea I have discarded in favor of getting the pieces done. I thought it'd be nice if people who came to the show actually got to see work in the gallery.
Instead of here are your great ideas
for work. Exactly. Exactly. I could have a sign in each place where there isn't a piece that I managed to make, and it will describe what would have been there.
You could have a little audio file of Kim describing what it's going to be like for a future show or something.
I can call it my conceptual work, because you have to conceptualize it yourself.
Imagine if you will.
That would be legitimate art if that were my intention, but that wouldn't be my intention in this case.
You're more of a show and tell kind of person.
Yeah, I prefer a show and tell, frankly. Although I am hoping to do some kind of spoken word or reading at the opening reception, which is Saturday, May 7th, by the way. Starting at 1:00. I know that watching someone do developmental work is not as
flashy or exciting.
Flashy, glorious, or whatever as watching someone create finished work, but it is hugely important to what an artist does in the studio. It's this kind of thing that leads to the new work, This is a hands-on form of research, aside from the fact that I'm researching reference. Um, I'm researching kinds of line, kinds of shape. So I'm holding the tool differently. I'm pressing differently. I'm controlling it with differently with my hand muscles and forearm muscles.
Or he says, speaking of developmental, just learned something about elastic. It doesn't take well to hemming.
Right.
Says, what I did will do in a pinch. And this is really what it's about, right? You don't know until you try.
Until you try
and then
something.
You try it, and that, like, you can conceptualize out the wazoo and try to anticipate but really the faster and easier route is to do 1.0 and see how it goes, and then like do 2.0 based on what you learned in 1.0, right?
That's one of the reasons that just having ideas floating around in your head is not useful. Just floating around in your head. You have to capture them and you have to try them.
Certain processes, whether they're artistic or just life processes, that I only do upon occasion, I end up relearning the same lessons over and over again, right?
Like, there are digital ones like that for me too, and I've been digital since 1986, working in visuals, and there's some things I've done them repeatedly, but I've done them repeatedly over the course of how many years, with long stretches in between, and it drives me crazy that I have to go back and go, how do I do that again? Go to YouTube, like, watch a video, watch 2 videos, and okay.
Oh yeah, right.
And then it's just in working memory. It's not storing in long-term memory because I don't do it enough.
It'll be there if you do it consistently for the next little while, and then as soon as there's a gap.
But there's always other stuff to move on to, so.
The endless juggle of a life.
And a brain. I'm really starting to learn a lot. Ever since my concussion, especially, I've learned a lot about brain management. Not in general, necessarily, but my specific brain anyway. It makes me laugh ruefully at what I have to do for it now and what it can and can't do so well now. Interesting how I ended up getting sculptural. I'm getting sculptural because I'm really feeling this form. So it's not just a question of line for me. It's a question of more dimensional form. And I've got lots of lines in there that are the wrong line. And so I just draw and redraw until I find the right one. But I'm really quite enjoying feeling it more. I had to put a pause on my singing lessons because I just don't have the bandwidth for it, but I am occasionally doing a bit of singing practice. I mean, I've lost some of I'm not in good form voice-wise, but it's good for keeps my morale up and helps my energy, actually. So. After my shows, there's so much that I'm saying after my shows.
Yeah, well, it makes it simpler, right? Because now
I certainly can't do it before.
No, you just
or during. But I'll get the lessons going again, and I'll practice a lot more again. And I'm thinking this year is going to be the first year I'm going to try an open mic.
Wow.
one of those
Big
open
step.
mic events.
Big step.
Which is going to scare me to death.
Which
but
is why you're going to do it.
Yeah. I feel like it will be really good for me.
It will.
Yeah. So now I'm riffing because that's what happens.
Well, you start warming up, right? And you start.
Well, and now I'm thinking in this vein, but I'm thinking in this vein, making it mine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of
in response to what you're feeling your hand do and what you're seeing on the page,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. Some of the best references are sculptural references, but even if they're graphic, there's a latent sense of form in them. And this can kind of help you, certainly help me, develop more of a world. Not just, oh, that didn't work very well. Not just an isolated set of shapes or whatever. And that's about the connection and relationships between shapes and forms. So that's very valuable. It will help me find my way with this. It doesn't, the connection doesn't have to be obvious. My developing this into a more dimensional form of representation. I don't have to say to myself, oh, okay, I can see an application for this. No, I'm thinking, right? This is me thinking, but thinking in drawing. And it is inherently valuable. My work will benefit from it, even if it doesn't look like this. I think it'd be fun to have some kind of something like that. Can you see that? Whoops, sorry, I'm going backwards. That sort of pale ribbon coming up through the center of the flame. A very fat graphite stick here. This graphite stick is actually, they're my favorite graphite sticks. They're made by Lyra, Lyra. Whoops. Again, I'm going backwards.
Lori says she feels encouraged by those affirmations of experimenting having its own value.
Oh, yes. I'm glad because it's undervalued. We can be so focused on product and outcome when in fact the product and outcome are only the result of all the things that lead to it. Things that seem irrelevant contribute to it. Things that failed, quote unquote, contribute to it, because failure is just you're just trying to get to something and you just haven't got there yet. It's just you're learning something from the failure.
So many times I have to change direction for what I really want, having gone down a trail that didn't ultimately lead where I wanted to go. But that doesn't mean I didn't need to go down that trail as far as I needed to realize, oh no, I need to course correct. But I've learned stuff along that still, it's like saying, oh, I went for a hike and I didn't go to where I wanted to. So it's an utter failure. But guess what? You learned that, oh, I need to take more water. You got fitter from going on that hike.
Or you discovered a waterfall you didn't know was there. That wasn't a failure,
Yeah, it is a failure to understand the nature
process
of
and journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. and that's actually the one of the problems I have with art becoming so academic, contemporary art becoming so academic in process, like everyone feeling they have to go get multiple degrees in it. Not because it doesn't warrant lots of education, learning, process, experience, and all of that. It's literally limitless, right? So it's a and it is a discipline, but it's a discipline that needs not to be constrained by the imperatives of an academic system. And often what ends up happening is the focus on, yes, there is some talk of process, but there's a huge focus on outcome, because what are you critiquing? You're critiquing these things at this stage. And some critiques are, let's just say, they're not conversations. They're not necessarily in the spirit of inquiry.
Well, and I think a lot of art school grads end up not making art because
They get
so
scarred by
scarred
that.
and traumatized by it.
Yeah.
And they
And
thought
think they're a failure.
Yeah, and they thought they were going in to be creative, but in fact it's being treated more and more like design. Like, what is your
what's your proposal?
What's your proposal?
Work
now,
to the proposal,
make
deliver
it.
Yeah.
Instead of making discoveries and developing new worlds and new excitements.
Now, that's not universally true, but it's excessively true.
We've noticed, yeah.
And there've never been more art programs and more art students and more graduates from master's programs in art. The United States has had MFA programs longer than we have here. Here, the tradition was art colleges. So I think all the famous schools in Canada started out as art colleges
and have since become
universities. Emily Carr, NASCAD.
Because they can get better funding, and
they get much better funding. And that's, there's an imperative based on the economic model of the education system, right?
And so even if an art educator is more interested in students doing open-ended exploration to develop their personal work, they have to mark them, and they have to have some sort of a
and university marking is different than college marking, which is different than, there's also a kind of art school that's an art school, not a college, like Toronto School of Art, Ottawa School of Art. I'm sure there are equivalents in the United States as well, and elsewhere. But very different imperatives and different assessment systems, and different ones will suit different people. But the problem is the society values the MFA program.
Yeah.
And so that's what students will tend to get support for from their parents, from their peers, from their own sense of self-esteem. And it's a bit of a problem, because art used to be an art school can still be, where they still exist, a great place for students to go who are brilliantly talented or obsessed with or love making things visual, who cannot express themselves well in words, who are not linear thinkers.
All those things that that's another piece to your boxes and confinements, right?
Yeah.
Would you like me to switch the camera down so that you can say goodbye?
I guess so. I mean, we've gone over time and everything, which means Cherie has had a few more, and Carol perhaps have had a few more minutes. I'm still here. Cal's just doing that so you don't get seasick as he moves the camera.
Make you seasick the first time, so I'll try and learn from my mistakes.
So, excuse my rant. Every now and again, I rant, and yeah, of course, other people will disagree with me, and that's totally fair. They have different perspectives.
Ricky says, "Thank you, Kim and Cal. I learned a lot about developmental work and feel better about the struggle. I have to run now. Good luck with the show, Kim."
Thanks so much, Ricky. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's really
Since you
lovely
don't
having
usually
you hang
come
out
to
with us.
this,
Yeah,
I hope it will encourage you to come
2 weeks
more.
from now.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Actually, it's 3 weeks from now because of Easter.
Oh, right. Yes.
The
That's right.
25th.
The 25th.
April 25th. So, which will be very soon.
Very
Be
close.
the day before the one show. This show opens, and the week before the other show opens.
Wow.
It's an intense time.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I at the next one, I hope to share with you a little more. I shared with you a few images this time. I hope to share with you a little bit more. Not so much from this show, but from the solo one, Bird
Cool.
Offerings.
Excellent.
Maybe I'll be able to show you what I did with this Garuda bird if it works out. You know, it's all a process. It might not work out, in which case I'll just let it go, right?
Cherie says, "I love the photo selections behind you. I told Lisa about it. We plan to see it at the show."
Oh, that's
Awesome.
fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Please say hi to Lisa for me. For us. Yeah. So I hope you have an excellent 3 weeks now that spring is here. By the time the next one comes around, we should be well and properly into spring. Things will be blooming, presumably.
Yes,
In April, right?
Your work will be blooming.
Well, yes, there's that too.
and some of that flower stuff outside too.
That's right.
Flower and tree
I
stuff.
may be looking haggard
No,
at the next one, but I will be here. Anyway, fighting on.
Val says thanks again. See you in a few weeks.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and
and we'll see you again.
Take care and enjoy
the
the increasingly pleasant weather.
Yeah. Bye, all.
Bye for now.